I love looking at stuff like this. Um, I check this all the time. It's kind of like a tradition for me every 4th of July to come check this.
Mm.
So, did I pull the right one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'll make sure I got the right year all right, American pride has taken a hit in recent years, and a new Gallup report shows it's not rebounding. Gallup's June survey, published on Tuesday, shows 67% of folks are extremely or very proud to be an American. A pretty high number, higher than I would have guessed. I got to say, 67 is pretty big. By comparison, that figure ranged from 81 to 91% between 2001 and 2016. I bet 2002, if they did this in June, like 2002 would have been through the roof. Because after 9/11, I mean, for those of you who were around for that was a wild time with 9/11. It was a wild fucking time. So, like, President Bush had like a 90% approval rating after 9/11, like, which is something insane to think about, that anybody could get a 90. Because I can tell you, if like we had a 9/11 attack happen today, if it would have happened 5 years ago, at any time or under Obama, it would not hit 90%, the approval rating. It would not. You would have like 40% of the country saying this attack is Joe Biden's fault. He needs to be sent to the gulag. There's no way it would hit 90%. It's like a different universe. And it's just 4 percentage points higher than the low of 63% in 2020. Another 18% of Americans say they are moderately proud. The good news, just 5% say they aren't proud at all. And this one says, I knew Craig would laugh at that. To me, this kind of goes together into a story about people just being more dissatisfied with government and more unhappy with what they think the American democracy should be. People are still generally proud to be Americans, and she's less worried about dented national pride than the eroding trust in government. I mean, I think those kind of go hand in hand. And someone, Brinson right here, they found an abysmal level of trust in the government is down to 20%. So can you have pride in a nation when you don't trust its institutions? Just 21% of those 18 to 34 said they were extremely proud, compared with 40% of people 35 to 54. And 54% of those 55 and older. So, all right, I would like to get your opinion on this thing, Craig, with people's pride in being an American dropping over the years. And I remember, so I grew up, like a Christian fundamentalist and everything, and which is the group that you imagine is going to be like skyrocketing. It's like, the Lee Greenwood, wrap yourself in the flag type folks. Yeah, but even growing up in that environment, which is essentially, I had a friend of mine refer to American conservative evangelicalism. It's not a religion as much as it is what do you call it? It's a civic religion. It's a civic religion that kind of worships, like a conservative Christian version of the United States and capitalism and white supremacy. Yep. But I remember I had a pastor who would always say that you shouldn't say you're proud to be an American because, like, what did that have to do with you? You just happen to be born here. What pride could you possibly take in the fact that you were born within some imaginary lines? But what he said was that you should be thankful to be an American, which is a problematic statement in and of itself, but it would make more sense. Like, it actually makes more sense than saying you're proud. But anyway, what do you think about this in general?
I mean,
Greg?
It's funny because if you would have asked me 10 years ago, my answer would have been completely different than what I'm about to say. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there are a lot of Americans who have yet to break free from the propaganda that we've been fed our entire lives about how America is a bastion of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's simply not true. It's just not. Yes. Do we have individual rights? Can I drive across the border to another state without people bothering me about it? Sure. Mm-hmm. But that's not, you can do that in a lot of countries, right? I don't have the freedom to have any job I want because my healthcare is tied to my job, right? So I have to have a job that I might not like to have healthcare, right? And that's not just me. That applies to everybody in the United States, right? Yep. And so that we're just not as free as people think we are, right? And the idea that America is all over the globe, spreading freedom and looking out for quote unquote America's best interest in the region. Like, that's all horseshit. That's imperialist bullshit. America goes around the globe to exploit resources and people, especially in the global south, right? They just tried to do it in Bolivia again for the second time in 5 years because Bolivia has the world's largest lithium deposit. And what do we need lithium for? We don't have to use lithium for it, but we do. It's batteries for electric vehicles and cell phones, and other stuff too. But those are the two main things, right? So it's like, I just think there's some people that don't understand that what the United States does. And they're saying how they're going all over the place to look out for America's interest. No, they're looking out to get resources for the capitalist class to use to make them richer while exploiting everyone else in the process. So there's people that just haven't come to that level of awareness yet about what's actually happening.
Yeah. I feel like you can get away with spreading this propaganda and having people swallow it if you either have people who are, comfortable and prosperous and living lives where, of relative affluence across the board, and you're terrorizing the globe. Or, maybe the life isn't going so great for them, but they can look on the TV and say, oh, we're doing good across country. If you're doing neither, it's going to be kind of hard for people to buy into that. Like they need to have something to point to. And we don't have anything to point to. Like, World War II was a long time ago. Okay. People, that only, carries you so far. And what I write down here, what you said here. So I remember years ago, I was when I first, started moving on to leftism, I was telling a friend of mine about this and how I'm just being real here. Like, the left has, like, the reality has a left-wing bias. That's just how this works. That when you actually see the world for what it is, like, you can't help but, if you're honest with yourself, you're going to be a leftist. And so, or a monster, one or the other. I guess you could do that. But yeah. And I was talking about, kind of like Noam Chomsky's thing, where he goes through the list of every president since Eisenhower and how they've all committed a war crime. War crimes. Yeah. And, talking about this and how, you don't got to buy into the propaganda. And he says, well, listen, I'm still proud to be an American. He says, I still believe it's the greatest country in the history of the world. I said, what does that mean? What the hell does that mean? Right. And he didn't have an answer because there is no answer. Like it's a thought terminating cliche to say this is the greatest country it's ever lived. There are no, like, greatness is not a quantifiable property. There are no units of greatness. Like, anybody could say this is the great, because if you want to say that, this is the country with the most powerful military in human history, okay. You want to say it's the country with the most money, okay. I mean, you can say that. But saying greatest doesn't make any sense. It's not. Makes no sense. Yeah, it's a useless statement, and we've been couching ourselves behind this for the better part of 60 years now. When World War II ended, and we were the last remaining, global superpower, and we kind of, grew to the, globe bestriding hegemon that we become, over the last few decades. And we took this to say, okay, well, I guess that, God has blessed this country, and, we are the recipients of a grand vision from the founding fathers 200 years ago. And there's something special and unique about us. And more people, even more and more conservatives, are beginning to figure it out. Conservatives will still say this because they have to, but you talk to them, and it's funny to me whenever they talk about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment will always get me, because I think you can make, there are plenty of decent arguments you can make for citizens having the right to bear arms. There are decent arguments to make on this. They always make the worst ones. They always make the worst ones possible. Yeah. It's so dumb. And one thing they love to say is that, I need to have any firearm I want with zero restrictions and zero regulations. In case the government becomes tyrannical, then we can rise up against it. It's like, homie, the government is already tyrannical. And right. You already know this because you guys say it all the time. How many times have they said Joe Biden is a dictator? The Democrats in the Senate, they are enacting these restrictive laws on the country. It's like, so you live in a country that has 800 military bases around the globe, and we enforce our will on the global south and on destitute populations at the barrel of a gun, like you said, so we can extract lithium from Bolivia, rare earth minerals from Afghanistan, or just all around the globe, just to make just to enrich these multinational corporations. You haven't done a thing about it. A cop can kill you for looking at them the wrong way at any time, and you haven't done anything about it. The government allows, we talked about these campaign finance laws to allow legalized bribery for elections. So corporations, so corporations can pay politicians to allow them to put microplastics in your food. Like, the government is so tyrannical, it's slowly turning your children into styrofoam, and you haven't done a goddamn thing about it. So miss me with this. I need my weapons to overthrow a tyrannical government. The tyranny's here, and you haven't done a damn thing.
Totally. Well, and I don't remember who said it. It was somewhere on the internet in the last few weeks, but like the point was that people saying that America is now fascist or is becoming fascist are, the more people that start saying it are the ones that it hasn't never affected them before. So they never thought it was, right?
Yeah.
And so those are going to be predominantly white people, in particular white males, right? But like, there's lots of people that have thought the USA has been tyrannical since its existence, right? Like, it was a country built, founded as a tax shelter, right? And built on genocide and slavery. So, it's been tyrannical since its inception, and it hasn't stopped. They do it everywhere. Like, it's, do I have a level of comfort that other people don't in the United States? Yes. That's not those people's fault though. Right.
Yeah.
Like, this whole idea. And that's the thing about the capitalist class and their bootlickers. It's always about, you don't have what I have because you don't deserve it. Everyone deserves fucking food, shelter, water, healthcare, right? Medicine. Like, everyone deserves that. Doesn't matter who you are, right? And, until we have, a society in the United States in particular where that happens, where we don't have people being put in prison for being without a house, which just became legal now.
Yep.
Like, until that stops, it's hard to be proud to be an American, right? Like, I think, I don't know.
Yeah. Another glorious six. I saw a great post right before we joined that for the rest of our lives, every summer is going to be ruined by a statement starting off like in a 6-3 decision from the Supreme Court. Like, it's going to happen, for the next 20 years or something like that. But yeah, it's difficult to sit back and just say, oh yeah, this is great. This is fantastic. And especially if you haven't experienced it before. I forgot to check in the comments. People said Mark says, it's not just trusting the government, it's trusting mainstream press and trusting the church. Institutions have taken a hit. So yeah. And for the most part, that's good. For the most part, I would say, because just having it's weird. It's a weird double-edged sword, because it's good to be skeptical. Like, you don't just believe things because somebody says it. That's bullshit. But it got into weird areas, like with COVID and stuff, when like people who knew what they were talking about. Like, so people were like, oh, all these virologists say that COVID is real, but I've done my own research and I don't think it is. Like, no, you didn't. You didn't do research. I'm sorry. Like, unless you actually had like a live virus in front of you under a microscope, and you didn't, you wouldn't recognize it if you saw it. So at a certain point, we all take people's word for it. Like, when you're driving your vehicle, you're about to cross a bridge, you're trusting that the people who built the bridge, the government inspector, that this bridge is going to hold your car. Like you're not going to stop, pull over your car, and check the credentials of whoever verified this bridge. When you go eat, you have to have that kind of trust in institutions, for society to be. That's just how this works, And when people start veering off from this, and it's like, you see this a lot with the flat earth folks. They're like, oh, well, you're just going to believe a bunch of fucking nerds in lab coats to tell you the earth is flat or the earth is round. And we're paying for it in a lot of ways there. So I encourage a healthy skepticism, for a lot of reasons, but be reasonable, folks. Be reasonable in everything. We have actual cases where people, Americans, particularly Black Americans, tried to fight back against the USA in self-defense. They're all that. Look, this is, I'm sorry, I'm going off course here, but this is something that I talk about all the time, that you ever notice that when you learn history, you learn about a lot of great men, which is a weird way to teach history too, like the great man theory of history, that, history is changed by the course of these exceptional individuals and not by, the forces of markets and societies and civilization. But they focus on like Napoleon or George Washington, Julius Caesar, like all these people. A lot of these people have something very interesting in common. They all fought and killed for what they wanted. And it's very consistent. Where you don't see that? You don't see it with Black people. Like how many characters or historical figures did you learn about in history class in high school that was a Black person who took up arms to solve a problem and was venerated? You don't see a lot of it. In fact, you don't see a lot of it outside of like white Christian men in general. You don't. What you will see, yep. You'll see a lot of Mahatma Gandhis. You'll see a lot of Susan B. Anthony. You'll see a lot of Martin Luther King. Now, with those people, they sanitize that as well, because the whole version we have of these folks as, they, like Martin Luther King, just politely asked for the racism to stop, which is, nonsense. Like it's like a lot more complicated than that. But yeah. If you're like a white Christian man, you pick up a weapon and stand a post. If you're anyone else, you pick up a sign and stand in a field. That's where you're limited to. So it's really interesting how that's so you're right, Kyle. And go ahead, sorry.
To Kyle's point about that, like all we have to do is look at Malcolm X.
Yeah.
King, Fred Hampton, George Jackson. Right?
Yeah. Nat Turner.
Yeah.
It's like these people are viewed as villains.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. They're essentially labeled terrorists by the US government. Right. And then, as for sure with, MLK and Malcolm X and Fred Hampton, the government killed them.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, that is what's happening. And they don't teach you that part of it in school, right? They teach you the part you said where King asked nicely for racism to stop. Like, no, like that's what they teach you. It's like, what? No,
it's just wild that's the current. That's just like, that's what most people think. Like even people who aren't like, actively racist or anything. That's what they were taught as kids. And it's like, oh, no one had thought of that. No one said, hey, folks, how about we stop the racism? And it worked. It just worked. They're like, oh, okay, that's just, it is wild how it's taught that way, and everyone just buys it. Even with white people, a lot of white people killed by police. No one apparently cares. That's interesting. So this is one of my favorite retorts whenever people talk about Black Lives Matter as so you're saying only Black Lives Matter and everything. Well, it's actually all lives matter and everything. And all the question you had to ask is, okay, what has the All Lives Matter movement done to stop police brutality? Because if you're saying that the problem is that it just says Black and not all, like, show me how many protests the All Lives Matter movement does whenever a white person is killed by a cop. Doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. Black Lives Matter does. When you guys remember that? I don't remember the guy's name, but he was a guy who was in a hotel in the hallway, like laying on the ground, and the cops still lit him up. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. It was a white guy, and he was in the hallway, and the cops had their weapons on him, and they told him to lay on the ground, like flat on his stomach, arms to the side, and they were telling him like move your left arm to your hip or something, and he like moved his right arm instead. They shot him, and it was a white guy. I didn't see All Lives Matter protesting that. I didn't see it.
Right.
And so yeah, it seems like All Lives Matter is just a cudgel against Black Lives Matter. It doesn't seem like you actually care about people's lives at all. So yeah, it's true.
Well, one thing you want to tell like people need to understand is that cops aren't supposed to shoot guilty people either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's not what they're supposed to do to them.
Yeah. The punishment for, the punishment for speeding is not death. I even if you're an asshole, I'm sorry. I get this is in fact, the punishment for murder isn't death by a cop. That's not the cop's job. The cop's job isn't to carry out the sentence of execution. That's not how this shit works. Like, you exist to hold someone until it's time for their trial. That's your job. That's it. It's not it's so weird too that it's hard for Americans to grasp the fact that police forces around the country, not like a lot of them don't act like ours. It's very weird for them to understand. Like, you ever watch a British TV show and none of the cops have guns? Like, they have a special unit of like armed police. It's so weird to see it from an American's perspective. It's like, yeah, actually you can. Now, I guess it might be a little more difficult in the United States with guns being everywhere. I guess that might be a little trickier. Yeah.
Part of it, right? And like Canada and England, as far as I know, neither one of those countries have the right to bear arms. It doesn't mean you can't have guns. It means you can't, like, it means you don't have the right
target.
It's a privilege. It's a privilege, like getting a driver's license, more so than it is just walking into a store and buying one.
Right? Yeah. Hold on, let me look at this real quick. What this means. Do you hear my cat? He's yelling. He's a big baby. I know, Wolfie. I know, buddy. Okay, so there's this French film I saw years ago. It's called La Haine. And I just looked up I couldn't remember what La Haine meant in English. It means hatred. But it's about these three kids in some ghetto in Paris, or I think it doesn't matter. Some French city. And they're three poor kids, and they're all from like minority groups. Like, there's a black kid and an Arab kid and a Jewish kid or something. And they're ne'er-do-wells, doing kid shit, petty crimes here and there. And then, like, a quarter of the way through the movie, one of them finds a gun. And you would think, like, watch the movie, it's so weird watching it as an American. It's like they pulled Excalibur out of a stone or something. Like, it was like this life-changing event. They ran the whole block because they had one firearm. Like, it was so weird to see as an American. Like, I don't know, like, why, how it played in France, but seeing it as America, I was like, a gun? Like, they have a gun, and like, they were untouchable. And so, like, that's actually good. That's actually good. I hate to say it. That's actually good because less violence, and policing would be simpler. It would be simpler if you didn't have to worry about every single person packing heat whenever you dealt with them. So yeah, it is wild. Hold on. I think back in 2015, the number one cause of death among all men was being killed by the police. Apparently, that can't be right. That can't be right. Really?
I'd be surprised if it wasn't cancer.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, it can't, because like I feel like it's got to be like tens of thousands. Yeah, like tens of thousands of people die in car accidents alone. I don't know, but anyway. But yeah, so this is actually, want to wrap it up with the American thing, is that I am in total agreement with you and probably everyone listening that this founding myth we have that the United States is somehow exceptional. I mean, it's unique. Of course it's unique, but every country is unique. Like, that's not, everyone's unique in their own way. But I do think that there is some utility here in people actually being proud of the nation they live in, or having pride in it, because it does help to like mobilize people. Because if everyone hates their country, why bother fighting for it? And this is something, I don't know if I asked you this before, because I know we went up before, because I asked this a couple people. What does it mean to love your country? Have we ever talked about that? I don't know.
Think we've talked
about
it.
Great. Yeah. this is something like when people say they love the United States, what the hell does that mean? Like what does it mean when you say that you love the country? So it could mean one of a few things. It could mean you love, the land itself, which I don't know, like the Great Plains, the amber waves of grain, the purple mountains majesty. Look, there's a lot of beautiful locations, but I don't think that's usually what people mean when they say they love the country. But you also have, the government, and it can't be that. Almost nobody loves the government. Like you'd be hard pressed to find people who's like, oh, I love our government structure. That's not most folks. And then you have what I think a lot of people mean when they say they love the country, especially conservatives. They love the mythology. They love this mythical version of the United States where, we had these scrappy, slave owners and aristocrats and quasi-aristocrats in the 13 colonies who, with the help of God and, brotherly love, got together and founded the greatest nation in the world. And we've continued that great tradition. Cheesy as it sounds, a lot of people buy it. A lot of people believe it. Now we have this beautiful melting pot where everyone gets along and we're a force for good for the nation. That's what I think most people mean when they say they love the country. But what I think we can push is that when you say you love your country, the fourth option, you love the people. You just love the people of the nation, which is funny. A lot of people in the other group, they don't love the people. It is funny because they when they say they love America, they mean, and they love certain people in America. There's a lot of people they don't love. They certainly don't love us. You and me don't make the cut when they say that they love the country. They don't like immigrant populations. They don't like people who don't make enough money. They don't like the homeless. They don't like teachers unions. There's a whole bunch of people they don't love. Bunch of people. It's a small percentage that they actually love. But I think that if we push that, it can be useful, because one thing that I talk about, our messaging on the left gets muddled sometimes and actually kind of off-putting, is that, like, I, for example, use like Antifa with Black Bloc. I'm sorry. You look like bad guy. I'm sorry. Yeah, you showed up dressed like ninjas. People are gonna think, I don't know. I gotta say, you show up to a rally looking like Darth Vader. People are gonna think you're the bad guy. So like, I'm not saying we need to dress, like Apollo Creed and coming out in star-bangled, shorts and a top hat and everything. I'm not saying that, but it does bother me that the right has commandeered stuff that, like, loving the country. And although I hate to say this, but even like church, even though I don't like anything to do with church at all, that's still a lot of people that go. And a lot of good people. And so it's like, if we could, family values somehow they got and everything. So as far as like with agitprop, like, I think this would have some usage. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the people that say it and they love the things you're talking about and don't love specific groups or all of every other group that's not them, like those people are enjoying their privilege, right?
Yes.
That's what they're enjoying. That's what they love. They love their privilege. And, back within the last 10 years for sure, but you used to see things popping up, usually from people in the South, say things like, we want so-and-so to be elected, some Republican douche. We need him to be elected because we need to take our country back.
Yeah.
And it's like, I started hearing that a lot, and I'm like, I don't know what those fuckers mean. Our country's not going anywhere. Right. And so I asked a friend of mine, I'm like, what are they talking about? And he's like, they're concerned that their privilege is being taken away. And it was in response to, I think, gender neutral bathrooms in North Carolina, where I used to see it a lot. And it's like, their privilege, not their rights, are being taken away. It's privilege being taken away, not rights. That's the difference, right? There's a difference between it, and they see it as their rights being attacked, but because they don't understand that it's their privilege that is putting them in that position, right? Like,
and a lot of times it doesn't even rise to the level of privilege. It's like mild discomfort. It's just like like stuff that doesn't even affect them, and they just lose their minds over this. Like,
right?
Like, you ever hear conservative stuff is like, well, I don't like the fact that I'm being forced to use pronouns, and I love when people say, like, okay, give me an example when you run across someone in the wild who has forced you to use a pronoun. Now, I'm not talking about someone you found online. I'm talking about someone you had no choice but to interact with, like someone you work with, someone who like teaches at your school or something. How many times did that happen over the past year? If it's more than one, you're looking for these people. Like it does, like this shit doesn't even affect you, and you're making up a scenario in your mind and getting pissed off about it. That's no way to live. Like, how are you surviving like this?
Yeah, they're not what I would say living, right? Like they just have a constant level of anxiety. I think that it's like you just don't need that.
Oh, it's sad, but I think that one of the things that I like to do is like why I got into doing social media in general was spreading leftist message and trying to do it on like an everyman level as much as I possibly can. What I think is a reason a lot of us get into it, kind of stuck around for the community. It's fantastic. I love that shit. But Kyle commented here. Sorry, all men 18 through 24. That makes more sense. That would make more sense. Yeah, I could see that. God, that is sad too. But all right, gonna wrap things up here. Thank you so much for joining, Craig. It was a different type of episode we had today with just two folks, but hey, it worked pretty well actually.
I'm glad to be here, man.
I was actually worried with only two people, it might be a super short episode, but we went an hour and a half. Like it's pretty much or an hour and 15 minutes, like slightly less. My math, hour and 45 minutes, only 15 minutes less than usual. Yeah, I can do math. One more thing. Here's the name of the study: risk of being killed by police of force in the United States by age, race, everything. Yeah, when you broke it down by age, Kyle, that did make more sense. I was like, man, there's no way that everybody suffered from that. Yeah. But go ahead and toss it to Craig here. Where can the folks find your content, my friend?
So my podcast is called Voices from the Left. That can be found anywhere podcasts are found. I also upload the audio to YouTube. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Instagram at dystopian_grift, on Blue Sky also, and Threads. And you can also find some of my content on the Anti-Capitalist Podcast Network. That we just did a live stream on Sunday for Palestine for that. And we've got, it's a brand new project. So we've got some content up for that too. So that's on YouTube specifically. And also I have an Instagram page for that. So
fantastic.